At the point that you look down and you understand there's no fear, and there's no need for the emotional reaction, there's a circuit in your right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex and your medial prefrontal cortex that sends a signal back to your limbic system that says, shut off the fear. You look down and you see, oh my God, it's a hose, it's not a snake. The fear about that coil immediately turns off and does not have to come back up. It is resolved, etc.
All right. Got Sean Webb here, guys. Fellow Sean on the show today. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean.
Yeah. You come out from the Monroe Institute?
No, but I'm going there in a week. We have a special little event that we're doing for a bunch of invitees, I guess, to experience some meditation and some hemisync, Monroe sound science. Put vibrations in your ears, and the idea is, you put like 100 hertz in one ear and 4 hertz in the, or 104 in the other ear, and then you've got a 4 hertz differential that your brain then has to do something with. And so then the idea is that carrier signal opens up things in your mind that aren't usually active. And so you can experience different things and get into deeper consciousness, kind of cool stuff.
Interesting. I'm very excited, man.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
Yeah. I've been researching remote viewing, astral projection for years, but have never been able to get results.
Well, with technology assistance, it's easier to do. And I got to tell you, as a person who, this isn't my first rodeo as far as consciousness expansion goes. Like, I went into the middle of the Amazon jungle with Navy SEALs and drank ayahuasca and, experienced 5-MeO, et cetera. Technology can assist with expanding your consciousness if you're not into the psychedelics type of path. Yeah. To where if you're just looking for something natural that you can stimulate, use an outside source, but stimulate what's within you naturally. Right. You can do some amazing stuff.
And that might be the mainstream approach because the FDA or someone just denied MDMA research yesterday or something.
Bam. Big loss. Big loss for MAPS. They were really pushing the science, and they did a good job on the science that proves MDMA on first therapeutic dose has like a 70-some-odd% improvement for PTSD.
Wow, that's like a high percent.
Yeah, and they're talking about removing people from the list of disability folks with PTSD. You're talking about saving billions of dollars because most of these folks are on a plan that's going to be, managing it for the rest of their life.
Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, and so if you have something that can cure it, why not let them have it? And then you're going to save a bunch of money down the road with, obviously from a fiscal standpoint, but from a humanitarian standpoint. Yeah. And you're taking care of people. You're helping them grow and heal. I mean, that's pretty critical. But, there's this big fear, I guess, in the psychedelic, anti-psychedelic community that's just like, well, if we allow these people to walk around and eat these mushrooms on the ground or take these other compounds that help see people on the other side of the planet as your brother, then it's going to be harder to get people to, pick up a gun and go shoot them. Yeah. And I get it, national defense is certainly something that we need. We need borders and we need to protect people from bad actors, et cetera. But, at the same time, it's like, come on, guys, let's be a little more reasonable. If you're talking about asking people to lay down their life and then you're not giving them the things to be able to heal from the actions that they took after you asked them to, that's a little ridiculous.
Absolutely. I just saw a clip yesterday of Aaron Rodgers who said if every politician ate some psychedelics, there would be no wars.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
We put a lot more thought into it before launching a bunch of missiles, that's for sure.
There's something that it does to your mind. It just makes you more calm and at peace with things.
Yeah, well, I think it connects you into what is, right? There's this big dichotomy right now between classical physics and quantum physics. And the quantum side is the one that's fully inclusive and all connected all over the universe, right? The field is just one thing. Mm-hmm. There's this big argument right now between the two, but when you connect into that field, and there's this OR theory of consciousness where the reason you have consciousness is because of these little microtubules in our cells in our neurons, and they interact. It's been proven in lab environment that they do interact with quantum field environment vibrations. Mm-hmm. And so then the question becomes, all right, so that's an interactive system. How much of our consciousness comes from the non-local? How much of our consciousness are we tuning into that could be considered spiritual or et cetera, but that really is housed within the non-locality of the quantum fields? And so, that becomes a question of, okay, so what does psychedelics do? Because it acts on the HT2A receptors, which are highly correlated with consciousness in our brain. Well, is that opening up new avenues within the complexity of our brain, our neural structure, or is it helping us tune into the signal a little louder? right? That we then start to see things that we weren't able to see.
All right, guys, shout out to LinkedIn, today's sponsor. As a B2B marketer, you know how noisy the ad space can be. If your message isn't targeted to the right audience, it just disappears into the noise. Luckily, with LinkedIn ads, you could precisely reach the professionals who are more likely to find your ad relevant. With LinkedIn's targeting capabilities, you can reach them by job title, industry, company, and more. Stand out with LinkedIn ads and start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. LinkedIn ads allows you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful environment. You'll have direct access and build relationships with decision makers. There's over 1 billion members on their platform, 180 million senior level executives and 10 million C-level executives. You'll be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B. In technology, LinkedIn generated 2 to 5x higher return on ad spend than other social media platforms. You'll work with a partner who respects the B2B world you operate in. 79% of their content marketers said LinkedIn produces the best results for paid media. Me personally, I've found some great podcast guests, and it's been an incredible platform for finding out new information. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/social to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/social. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be.
Previously, because the signal-to-noise ratio is a little bit better.
And some people will say that's psychic abilities, right?
Some people, yeah. Well, that's certainly the basis for the ability to have psychic powers and have psychic abilities is to be able to tap into that non-local portion of consciousness. It's a great brand new book. I just got a advanced copy of Federico Faggine's new book, Irreducible, which explains the difference between the classical physics model and the quantum physics model, and where consciousness can't fit over here and does fit over here, and does so from like this guy invented the microchip. He invented the capacitive touchscreens we use on our phones. He invented the first AI chip, which everybody laughed at originally, and now is the only chip in use. He's a super genius, right? But he talks about consciousness and whatnot. Tapping into that connected space is this new exploration that I believe humanity needs to dive into a little deeper, because a lot of positive things come out of it when we
For sure. And there's very little, I feel like, we know about consciousness right now.
Yeah, hugely. I mean, we don't even have a standard definition. Like, most people will start with the definition of what is consciousness, and then they'll take it from a human perspective. Like, oh, well, our consciousness is our quality. It's our ability to smell a rose and have it be what it is for us in that moment. And then, the other side of the fence is, my definition of consciousness is more the intelligence within the fields that the information, you have a large bit of information, things change with that information, and then an intelligent force acts upon that. Whether that's to be a collapse of wave function that's required for you to look at the moon or distant stars or whatever, but there's an intelligence within there. And that's what I call consciousness.
Got it.
Is the all-encompassing, everything is one, intelligence and acting motivation to take action within the fields itself. That's what I call consciousness.
Got it.
Totally different than, rose and how it smells to you. So we got to come up with a standard definition.
Yeah, for sure.
Because a lot of the physicists and the folks who say consciousness is fundamental to the universe, which is something I believe, those folks start from this definition over here. It's not, what a rose smells like to me, right? So we got to come up with a good definition that everybody's got to work from.
And is it true most of our decisions are from the subconscious, not the conscious?
Yeah, most definitely. Like the first book that I read, if you want to understand how your mind works, your human mind works, to be able to take control of the variables and change them in a way that'll change your life. There are 2 variables that your subconscious uses to make all of the emotional decisions that you will make from the time of your birth to the time of your death. First is your expectation and or preference about something that's associated with your sense of self. You have to care about something. You have to be, an idea within your mind has to be associated with, this is my life, this is my existence. It starts with your body. And when a baseball comes flying at your head, our limbic system automatically ducks us out of the way as a function of that survival of self mechanism. Well, then these other ideas of self, like your name and your family members and your job and what you do and your likes and dislikes, etc., all then get expectation or preference set to, okay, everything on this list has to remain at status quo or increase in value, or we're going to have a problem. And then your perception comes in of the things that are going on around you in the world, including your thoughts and emotions, things like that can become perceptions. And then these 2 are balanced and measured against each other. If there is a congruency, then you have a positive emotion that comes from your subconscious. If it's imbalanced, then you have a negative emotion that comes from your subconscious. And there's a bunch of rules that are associated with whether it's fear or anger or sadness or worry, regret, etc. But basically, if you understand those variables within your mind, there's this really cool hardwire hack that comes about that's there because it's a survival mechanism. Okay, so if you're, we'll take a sidebar. Out of the corner of your eye, you look down and you see the coil on the ground. You immediately think it's a snake. Your limbic system assumes, oh my gosh, I got to get away. It starts prepping you for fight or flight, dumps your adrenaline into your blood system, etc. And your thinking brain is shut off. At that point, you look down and you see it's a hose. All of a sudden, the life-sustaining activity that your emotions were trying to create for you, which is distance between you and the snake, is now wasted energy.
Wow.
So you look down and you see it's a snake. So there has to be a circuit within your brain to be able to shut off your negativity and your negative reaction. Otherwise, you're not going to have your energy when you walk down 100 yards and a bear walks out of the woods in front of you or whatever, and you really need to run. Or not run. Make yourself as big as possible. But you get the point.
Yeah.
So at the point that you look down and you understand there's no fear, and there's no need for the emotional reaction, there's a circuit in your right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex and your medial prefrontal cortex that sends a signal back to your limbic system, says shut off the fear. And immediately it happens. Like you look down and you see, oh my God, it's a hose, it's not a snake. And the fear about that coil immediately turns off and does not have to come back up. Right? It is resolved, etc. So there's a hack that and this is science that goes back to Lieberman and UCLA in 2007. He proved that when you put a cognitive understanding to your emotional understanding, your limbic system will downregulate your negative. Okay, so if you're having a problem with anger or fear or sadness or worry, regret, etc., if you identify the two variables that we just talked about, your expectation and preference and your perception of that individual emotion, that turns down your negative stuff in real time.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
To the point that, like a whole bunch of people are saying this is the latest, greatest hack of your mind that gets you back in control of your mind. Because when you start to lose control is when you start to lose 10 to 20 IQ points. Your prefrontal cortex gets shut off.
Wow.
Your panic kicks in. You have a bunch of, norepinephrine, adrenaline, and cortisol to process in those moments. And even in that moment of your fear shutting off with the hose, you still got to metabolize all of those, neurotransmitters that are juicing your system at that point. So it'll take a while, but the quicker you get to that, the more relief you're going to have immediately. And the same is true, just like that hose, with that email that you got or the headline that you just read in your newsfeed that set you off and is going to, make you pissed off to where your next conversation with your significant other is going to not go so well, whatever it is, right? To be able to take control of your mind is to be able to take control of your life.
Yeah.
So when you understand the two variables within what I call the equation of emotion, those two variables are your subconscious, ruining your life.
And it happens to everyone.
Yeah, and it does happen to absolutely everyone. Now, the good news is when you put your focus on the two variables that created your strife, it shuts off because of the hack. It puts a cognitive understanding to your emotional understanding and allows you to downregulate it's a scientific word, for turning your negative stuff down. And it's so effective that the Navy SEAL guys who are now friends of mine said that this concept and this approach is better than anything that the Pentagon or Navy Special Warfare had for
Holy crap.
to help manage their own
So
stuff.
PTSD, depression, anxiety.
Yeah, all really helpful for that kind of stuff. Because at the point that you can look at your own mind and understand how your mind is working, that's the moment that you're thrown into meta-awareness and you can take control of your mind. Like if you're on the roller coaster, you're not in control of anything, right? You're simply a victim of what your brain is doing in front of you.
Right.
And then you're having to deal with the emotions and whatnot and what the brain shuts off and turns on and based on your reactions, et cetera. But at the moment that you can take control of your mind and look at your mind, all of a sudden, that's that moment that you have control to change what your mind is doing.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, at the point that you have full control of your mind, you have full control of your life because you have full control of your reactions, you have full control of your analysis and your decisions moving forward.
That's so exciting because it was previously thought your subconscious, you couldn't control it.
Right. And that's not true at all. And that's why this I call it mind hacking happiness, because the existing wiring is already there. You just got to push the buttons in a certain way to get them to work to your advantage. And then when you do, it's just it's really
Dude, that's massive because this could end all fights, arguments.
Yeah. Ultimately, 500 years from now, long after my death, this will be what helps create the conditions for world peace. Because the Dalai Lama said there is no world peace without inner peace. And that's completely true, because the point that you lose the motivation to lob bombs across borders to solve disputes about logistics or politics or money or whatever, and you can come to the negotiating table, all of a sudden, that changes the game substantially on international relations and being able to feed people logistically and, cure hunger, cure starvation, cure poverty. It's not until the point that you have control over your defensive self mechanism within your mind, which is what ruins everything. No disrespect to Hitchens, but in chapter 9 of my red book, Mind Hacking Happiness, I explain why he got off the intellectual bus one stop too early to try to blame everything on religion. It's not religion that is the problem. It is the attachment to the ideas that you want to defend, which is the core functionality under the religious, it happens with everything. It happens with religion. It happens with politics. It happens with, you go through your Facebook feed and see all the arguments that everybody has over the various things that they're really attached to. That's the problem. That's the process within our mind that we have to get by.
Right.
If we can get by that process of attaching to ideas that we must defend at all costs, to include killing other human beings who have ideas different to us, that will be the path to world peace once we get beyond that functionality.
Yeah, these labels can be dangerous because they could close you off to ideas.
Hugely.
Yeah, if you label yourself as a Democrat, you're just going to agree with a lot of their policies.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I'm apolitical, but when I vote, and I make the decision based on the planks. Right. I don't go, okay, so this is going to be my party, and whatever you guys say is fine with me. It's like,
it seems antiquated, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's like, okay, no, what do you think about this? I'm asking them the questions.
Yeah. You mentioned energy levels earlier. So does every human have the same energy level?
No. We're all victims of our physiology, right? And so, as much as I am a proponent of the idea that says your consciousness is non-local and you're really a spiritual energy out here and you're just tuning into a portion of that. At the same time, we are slaves to the capabilities of our physiology. Like we were having a conversation a little while ago. Your brain is your consciousness. I don't think comes from your brain; it comes through your brain. But your brain is a critical portion of that process. To where if it's screwed up, or if you're not taking care of it, or if you put a bullet through it, or something like that, you're going to have a bad time experiencing consciousness and living a human life. And so the variances in physiology certainly are going to affect our energy levels overall in our human form, right? But I think, you can certainly manage those to a large degree. Right?
Yeah.
Doing the right stuff, exercising and getting good diet, et cetera.
I loved what you said about remote viewing on Sean Ryan's show, because you said there's proof of it working now, which there's been a lot of skeptics in that space.
Yeah. The coolest bit of science, I put it in the latest book that I wrote, the Human Mind Owner's Manual. There's this amazing set of studies that everybody needs to look at, because the people, the skeptics who are panicking and disappointing are the only people that are looking at it. And we really need to look at it because it's an amazing set of studies. Let me explain it real quick so you guys can be impressed. So there was this... having a study in psychology at all, in medicine or psychology, has a huge hurdle. And the thing you got to get over is the subjectivity of the individuals in question of being studied, right? So you've got a whole bunch of people who are very unique individuals based on their physiology. So the problem is, how do you say that a result means any one thing in a group of tons of unique individuals? So the best study that they came up with, the best structure for a study for psychology, came when they wanted to just test the effects of priming on the human brain. And so what that was is they got a group of people and they gave them, they had them sit at a computer. And this is a great model because the question is, what are the researchers hinting at with these people? Are they guessing at these answers? That type of thing. You want to take all of the gotchas out of the study structure.
Right.
So you start with a group of folks and you say, okay, I'm going to set you in front of a computer. That computer is going to show you a little picture that's out of a standardized database, but in this case, we'll say it's a little kitty. So it's a little kitten, and you've got to select cute or ugly after that. And so they put these people through this cycle that the computer randomly selects a picture and then randomly selects the cute or ugly based on the words associated with the picture. And then the person clicks, and it measures down to the millisecond how fast they click. So then they have a control group. And then they send a second group through and they say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you the same cycle with the exact same data this control group got. But before this data set, we're going to give you a 1/30th of a second flash of one of the two words that we're going to give you later. So if it's a kitty and it's cute or ugly, they're going to flash cute 1/30th of a second beforehand and then measure if that affects you or not. And your speed of ability to select cute or ugly at the end. And what they found is it did.
Wow.
With the computer automatically randomizing everything, they figured out that priming a human being to, if you flash cute, you can select cute faster. If you flash ugly beforehand 1/30th of a second, then it takes you longer to select cute. Or if you're going to select ugly, it's quicker for you. So that affects the human brain, and this was absolute awesome science because the computer was randomizing everything, and it was just a computer measuring a human being. So Daryl Bem at Cornell said, okay, well, I want to test for precognition. So what he did is he said, okay, we're going to use the same exact model, except we're going to do one thing. We're going to take the primer at 1/30th of a second, and the reason that's important is because your subconscious will pick it up, but our conscious awareness can't pick it up. It's why movies are 1/24th of a second. 1/23rd of a second, you see the choppiness. 1/24th of a second, it's smooth motion within the movie. Yeah. So 1/30th of a second, you normally don't see, your subconscious picks everything up. So which is why you are delayed or accelerated in your ability to pick your distractor based on the primer that they put before the experiment. So the precognition folks said, okay, we're going to do the same exact thing, except we're going to take the primer from the beginning of the cycle and we're going to put it at the end. So functionally, and they still had the control group, so they went through without the primers. But so functionally, they were asking the second group to say, okay, we're going to give you the picture of the kitty, then we're going to show you cute or ugly. Then after you make your selection and after the computer has recorded your answer, it's randomly going to select to flash either cute or ugly at the end of the cycle. And so the classical physics folks would completely expect, okay, there's no way that this will have any statistical output at all, based on the fact that you're asking them to take an action and then you're providing them distractors here and then you're flashing something after the fact. It's not going to have any result at all, except it did. It absolutely did. And so in the first study, they showed that in the same way that the primer was moved to beginning of the cycle, it affected the ability for a person to select cute or ugly in milliseconds based on the primer being shown after the fact and being selected after the fact, after they took their action.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, but one study doesn't make a great result. So they replicated it. 90 different studies in 33 different labs in 14 different countries showed exactly the same result.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So then this is beyond Six Sigma math, which is the gold standard in science for this is a phenomenon. This is no longer a theory. This is absolute.
Wow.
And so what they've proven, there's two things they've proven. One potential is that humans have precognitive ability in our brains because they're wired into the quantum field through microtubules potentially, can reach beyond space-time barriers and look into the future and see what that distractor is going to be because our subconscious controls, how fast do we click the distractor, but the flash at the end of the cycle affected their ability to select cute or ugly in the time which they were given.
Insane. Yeah.
So crazy. So our brain looks into the future or our brain affects a computer's selection of correct, selecting randomly the correct distractor based on its measurement of whether we were delayed or not. I think that's a little more iffy than our brain actually looks into the future rather than, although the Pear Lab proved that random number generators are affected by human consciousness. And,
really?
Yeah. The Pear Lab at Princeton University, the Global Consciousness Project, Roger Nelson, is amazing at the science that they put together to show that random number generators that they have all over the planet will hiccup when major events occur. Like 9/11, the random number generators stopped acting randomly. Princess Diana's death, they stopped acting randomly. Whoa. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of correlations of major global events affecting these random number generators, at which point you start to think, okay, well, what's going on?
Yeah, right? What's your theory for that?
Well, global consciousness, consciousness being non-local, right? We're all connected to everything, even though our individual experiences are individual experiences through our physiology. We're all connected from a conscious perspective through the non-locality of the indivisibility of the fields, right? So if your consciousness is coming from the indivisibility of the fields, you're connected to absolutely everything across the universe, which is what a lot of world religions say, that we're connected to absolutely everything, and that everything comes from the void. At that point, you've got connectivity into your consciousness, and then you've got all sorts of amazing things that occur then. I mean, you're talking about the subset of data structures within a non-local field. You're talking about the potential for psychics to look into the future or past in the future and be able to discern what's going on in different locations, such as the remote viewing stuff that I talked about on Sean Ryan. Meeting Joe McMoneagle was amazing. He's a guy who outed an entire nuclear sub program in Russia from his office in Virginia, and he's got the paperwork at president level records to prove it. It's like he was reporting to the National Security Council at that point when he outed the nuclear sub program, and he had a huge public fight with Robert Gates, who called it, a lucky guess, and said, this is total fantasy, and he was the only, like Joe McMoneagle was the only guy who had nailed it to say, here's what they're working on in that big fancy building that you're really worried about, and it was literally the Hunt for Red October sub. It was, the sub that appears in that movie is a plot point. Is the sub that he outed, and he outed very specific conditions of the sub being 150% of what the largest sub in the world was at the time. The fact that it had canted launch tubes, slanted launch tubes, so it could fire on the run, which means that's a problem for losing 1,200 cities in 20 minutes. It had a special magneto or gravitational propulsion drive, which is still officially classified, I think, but it's out. And he nailed it all from his office in Virginia, and he was the only one. Everybody else in the room, the National Security Council, with all the gray beards from all the consulting shops, said, "Oh, it's probably a troop carrier, and they're going to move it over to the sea." And Joe was like, "No, there's going to be a canal, and they're going to drop it in the water right next to the building." And 4 months between his prediction of the canal and everything, they built the canal next to the building and dropped the boat into the water, and the National Reconnaissance Office sent a satellite over that building back when we didn't have 100% coverage on the planet. Yeah. They sent a spy satellite over the building, and he nailed it because after Gates saw the report, he said, "Total fantasy." And Joe's like, "Well, your total fantasy is going to launch in 112 days. National Reconnaissance Office sent a satellite over in 114 days and found a sub, the Hunt for Red October sub, sitting next to the building. Bay doors wide open, so that it's like the greatest intelligence gathering operation in the history of a military launch in history. Yeah, because the satellite got views of the reactor rods being loaded in and the missiles being loaded in, and got the schematics of the boat, from looking down into it, and he nailed it. Like they found the boat and they had pictures of it 2 days into loading, missile.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And he was able to see that with remote viewing?
He saw it with remote viewing from his house months before it happened.
What are the chances he did that rather than had a spy on the other side?
Yeah, so that's the big question that people would like to raise with that one anecdotal story. Mm-hmm. But the fact is he's got hundreds of stories. Right. Like he's got hundreds of stories, including one where he was called in for a missing girl, and he was trying to tell the sheriff, "You need to look here, you need to look here, you need to look here." And they found her within 30 minutes of her death. She had frozen to death.
Holy crap.
After they had let him take a dog team in, the sheriff was like, "Finally, all right, whatever." Because his original reaction was, "You're a psychic? Yeah, go yourself." Yeah. I don't listen to psychics, right, because of his ego or whatever. And the girl died because of it. And then on the other side of it, he's got stories of, like this other little boy went missing in his county, and the sheriff called him in the middle of the night, and he was here in Las Vegas, as a matter of fact. That night, phone rang, he woke up, and he immediately told him, took like 5 seconds, closed his eyes, and said, "All right, tell your deputy to go here to this place on this road, stop, get out of his car, and at 318 degrees on his compass, walk, 960 steps or whatever it is, stop, call the boy's name, and he will respond."
What?
Yeah, which is like, that's hell of a lot better than, I think he's near a body of water, right? It's like, This guy is like the real deal of being able to tap into non-local consciousness and identify where, because they sent that sheriff there. And the story was, they rang his phone, woke him up, he was upset at that, gave him the instructions, and then the sheriff called 10 minutes later and said, "Well, my deputy's out there, and he just got back from training at state capital that said children who are under 10 don't walk uphill, and 318 on his compass walks straight up a hill. So what do you want us to do?" And he's like, "Do what I told you." Boom. Slams the phone down, right? 15 minutes later, they call, and he's much calmer now. He's like, "Hello, did you find him?" "Yes, Joe, we did." And literally the officer went to the location, walked up the steps, stopped, called the boy's name out, and the boy was sleeping less than 100 feet away on the back porch of a cabin that was like a rental cabin or whatever, vacant. There was a couch on the back porch. There was a light on. And his 5-year-old kid said, my dad said if I ever got lost to walk to the nearest light and stay there.
Wow.
And so he walked up that hill against, the statistical probability, laid on the back porch on the couch. And so these are stories that he has in his...
Documented too, which is cool.
I mean, and you're talking about, he's been part of a black program for the last, number of decades that always got funding year after year after. It was never like, oh, another 10 years, you're good. It was, well, let's see your results this year.
Right.
Have you fallen off the capabilities wagon, or what's going on? And so they fund it year after year after year after year, which means, well, if you believe that some of government cannot waste money, at least they were getting some type of return before they were, handing out millions of more dollars to keep a black project going. And when you talk to the SEALs and the CIA guys and whatnot, they still use remote viewing to this day.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So it's probably known everywhere now at this point then.
Yeah.
I think CIA mastered it.
Every major country in the world has psychics working for it, and no one will admit it.
Yeah. No one wants to, right?
Right, exactly. Because, Joe says he says, no one wants to be caught dead standing next to a psychic.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, your credibility's in question now because you're hanging around with psychics,
So if everyone can predict the future, can it even be edited, or how does that work?
That's a good question. I don't know if we have the answers to those questions.
Yeah,
right?
because there's theories about you're born with a death date, right?
Yeah. Can you adjust that? I don't know. What's the limitations of your, because officially we have control, or we have a say in how these wave functions collapse. We're sitting at a solid table. There's nothing really here. The only thing that really exists here is the resistance of the energy from our hands passing through this table. Other than that, this
doesn't exist.
It's all dead space. Yeah. But we have to be able to interact with that and affect that by collapsing the wave functions and making this table real for us to not pass our hands through. Right? And that's literally how quantum mechanics works, and every experiment that we've done proves that. So at the point that you're tapped into that, what amazing other stuff can you do regarding breaking space-time barriers? Yeah.
I know you've studied various religions and philosophies, and you also connected with God during one of your meditations. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Boy, that was crazy. That's what started the whole thing, because I do not have the qualifications to write all the books that I wrote.
Yeah.
Except for, and understand, let me back up and qualify this. Every moment of discovery that a human being ever has comes from within them. And Einstein even said this. He goes, thinking has little to do on the road to discovery. He goes, you ponder a problem, you think about it, but then you sit with it and you let your body machinate on it for a while. And then at some point, the solution just comes to you.
Interesting.
Comes from you. And he goes, you have little to do with that.
Wow. I thought you think of everything, but when you put it like that, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So it always comes from your subconscious awareness, right? And even like this, the science shows that our conscious awareness is the dumb one. We're the dumb one at the top. Like as we go down deeper into our subconscious, we get smarter as we go along. They did a study where they gave one control group a very complex problem and say, okay, we're going to give you this problem of, having to value things and list them, et cetera. It's yada, yada, yada. And they gave them the full time to do that, and they measured the results. And then they took the second group, and they said, okay, we're going to give you the same exact problem. And then before they were even allowed to start working on it, they said, okay, we're going to give you this number sequencing problem, where you just got to put these numbers in order, real simple. And they said, okay, so do that first, and then we'll work on the second problem.
Yeah.
So they gave them the same problem as the first group. But the trick was they gave them the problem, and then they gave them the number sequencing problem. As soon as you were done with the number sequencing problem, they said, okay, what's the answer to the first question? And everybody's like, I don't know. See? Whatever. Who knows? Well, the brain scans showed that the area of the brain that was working on the complex problem was still firing. Like this group and this group, completely congruent.
Wow.
But this group also had the number sequencing portion of their brain working. And so their focused awareness was on the number sequencing. Their subconscious awareness was working on the complex problem.
Interesting.
Now, the answers that these guys gave when they thought they were guessing was better than the answer that these guys gave when they were thinking about it the whole time. Yeah.
Holy crap.
So your subconscious awareness, and this is one of the tons of examples, your subconscious awareness is a heck of a lot smarter than you are at your top waking awareness. So the deeper we go into consciousness, the smarter we are. Well, think about, if we're tied into non-local consciousness and the intelligence of the universe, where is the intelligence going to come from? It's going to come through the mechanism that we have that ties into us and brought forth from underneath to the level. And one of the great examples of that is slime molds, right? Sorry for the left turn, but let's talk about slime molds for a second. They're a one-celled amoeba that come together in millions of numbers to then take on different roles within the slime mold. So they've got basically the same exact DNA, and they're all supposed to do the same exact thing. But when they come together to create a slime mold, they start taking on different functions within the organism, and they become organs within the slime mold. 1% of them become COPS, which was kind of an immune system. It works around the slime mold looking for pathogens, swallows them up, and then drops out of the bottom of the slime mold, self-sacrificing, which is altruism at a cellular level to benefit the colony. So it dies, taking the pathogen with it, and basically throws itself on a grenade at a cellular level. Well, they did a test on these things. The slime mold, when you put piles of oatmeal in it that are in congruency with the population centers in Japan, within 24 hours, the slime mold built this little tube system to ferry down its nutrients of the oatmeal to the other portions of the slime mold. In 24 hours, it had built the exact rail system that engineers with computers had built years previous to ship the population centers around Japan. But at the same time, this slime mold made it more efficient and would have saved them millions of dollars had they followed this plan.
Whoa.
Versus the engineers with the computers.
That's crazy.
Where does this intelligence come from to be able to do that, right? It does not come from the complex system. Like the classical model can be argued all day long that, complex system, emergent properties, yada, yada, yada. It's like, I understand that math down to its core functionalities. It doesn't cover the evidence, right? So you've got that argument that it could come from the complex emergent property of the system, but the other side of it is it comes from below, right? It comes from the intelligence of consciousness itself to be able to figure out how to build a perfect rail system as compared to the population centers in Japan, because you're talking about dipping into infinite intelligence. Like when you're talking about a field, imagine infinity and having that be all of the information in the universe is in that one field. And so when you tap into any portion of that, you're tapping into all of it. Maybe there's only certain things that you can understand. Like, this thing, when I had the experience of deep meditation and I tapped into this, right? And sorry, we're just now getting to your question. When you tap into that, you're tapping into an intelligence field that is just flabbergastingly immense and almost immobilizing to a certain extent. It's almost too much to be able to fathom and process. So that's what I tapped into to write these 3 books that I wrote that are now, I have endorsements of multiple Navy SEALs and millionaires and billionaires and yada, yada, yada. They're all saying, holy shit, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's awesome. Love that. I didn't create any of that. I dipped into the intelligence that allowed me to bring that forth and become a channel for that information. I have no expertise in this area at all. I didn't go to school for, multiple dozens of years or get a PhD or multiple PhDs or whatever. I went through a consciousness expansion experience that started with a meditative experience that then within about 45 to 60 minutes dumped all of the stuff into my brain that I've been spewing out for the last 20 years.
Wow.
And it's the best stuff that's available for the management of the human mind, according to a bunch of folks who are experts in this field. Okay, so I started out that meditation with a little prayer. It's just like, if there's more intelligence out there, and I thought I had a good relationship with God or whatever. I was like, let me know. I want to know more. And about 20 minutes into that meditation, I was able to cease my conscious thought completely, which was the first time I'd ever experienced that moment. I read a book about D.T. Suzuki, The Introduction to Zen, and he conveyed that his idea was that Zen meditation is to cease all conscious thought and then hear what exists just beyond that. So I was like, all right, well, that's my basic idea. That's what I'm going to do. I went into this meditation. I was going to force my brain not to have any conscious thought. It took me about 20 minutes to get there. And then from there, that's when I had this huge consciousness expansion experience where, like, to sum it up, literally I felt like I was gone for thousands of years. Time dilation was crazy. Like, I lived a completely other different human life in between. Forgot that I was a human being named Sean, was gone so long. So this wasn't a, where I had agency and I was experiencing all these things. It's like I was this spiritual existence that is beyond Sean.
Yeah.
And experienced a ton of stuff, understood how everything in the universe worked. That's where I got all this information to come back with to say, okay, here's all the information that I was able to glean, which is all, what all the other ancient, religious masters that we adhere to did is they tapped into that and they just started spewing it. And at that point, I spent so long away that I forgot I was human, was actually disappointed to learn that I was coming back to be Sean Webb again. I was like, come on, seriously? Yeah. You're going to give me all this stuff and then dump me back in this thing? I'm like, no. And so that's when I got to take back, how the human mind works. I was like, I got to do something. And so after having all the experience of understanding the universe, seeing it all in its multidimensionality, running it for a little bit, because it was like kind of, God loves a great sense of humor. Is like, I got to take a leak. You want to run this thing for a while? It was awesome, but it was perfect. After all that, after that whole experience of thousands of years of being away, seemingly, which all happened within like 45 minutes to an hour within my physical existence, I learned, okay, time to come back. You're going to be a human. And I was like, no, this sucks. You can't show me all this stuff and then not give me anything to glean some positive momentum out of this. And they go, well, all right, what do you want? And I was like, well, let's get this pain and suffering thing knocked out. And they were like, haha, you went there first. And it was at that point that I got like visions of Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad and all these folks who like, okay, well, I gave this to people before, but look what happened. We screwed it up along the way. What are you going to do? So yeah, I went through those notes of how the human mind works, how our pain and suffering comes to be, was able to put it into a few books.
Wow.
And
can't wait to read those, man.
Yeah. And so it's a proof that, okay, so for me, that was proof. When I got that stuff, it's like, okay, you're going to have a sign, a spiritual revelation. What does that mean? And how are you any different from the next guy who thinks he knows everything and yada, yada. Well, we ran the science of the mind hacking happiness stuff through some higher institutions of learning, and they confirmed all the stuff that the model had completed, which for me was the holy moment.
That's crazy.
Because I was like, okay, I got this vision. Who knows if it's right? I was just another guy with a theory, yada, yada. And then UCLA and USC and MIT and UCSD and these other institutions, Harvard, started to prove that the portions of the model that I put together of how the human mind works were absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay, so this is interesting to me because, okay, where does intelligence come from? Where does discovery come from? Where does creation come from? What are the motivating mechanisms to help us get our minds into those spaces? Where did this chunk of information come from that finished Aristotle's work, basically? That's what I was told by one of the MIT professors. She's like, yeah, this basically finishes what Aristotle started.
Holy crap.
And I was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, but then I was, for me, a lifelong learner, I was like, okay, what does that mean regarding our tapping into intelligence? What does that mean for our tapping into discovery of new stuff? Where does the intelligence of the universe store that stuff? Where does it come from? How did it come through my head to be the first of anyone to be able to put this stuff out in a useful fashion? How am I that idiot? Right? So then it becomes a question of, okay, so let's dive down into the consciousness rabbit hole and start discovering things there. And, oh, man, there's a whole load to discover down here in consciousness expansion land. And tapping into infinite intelligence is just one of the benefits that can occur. And, you can do other things that are amazing and awesome. So that experience started this whole journey. It was, okay, I don't know whether this meditation crap is any good or not. I don't know whether this, expansion of consciousness thing is going to come about or be anything big. What is all this about, etc. That turned into, holy shit, I just got delivered the most awesome of awesome packages because now my life is amazing. I don't have a problem with any of the negativity that I'd used to struggle with.
Right.
My life has meaning now. Everyone that I talk to that I explain this stuff to has a better life after that. Like,
wow.
It's really cool because once you, like the FedEx logo, this is Marketing 101. When you see the FedEx logo, you never see the arrow in the middle. But if you've gone through a marketing class, one of the first things they'll teach you is between the capital letter E and the lower letter X, go look at it right now, you'll see a perfect white arrow in between the two. Once you see that arrow, you can never unsee it.
Yeah, facts.
Right? So this is the same type of thing. Once you learn how your mind works, you can never unsee it. And then that helps you take control of it for the rest of your life. It's like you can't even unsee it. If you want to self-sabotage, you can't do it because of the hardwired hack that we talked about a little while ago that'll turn your negative off. If you're looking at the variables that this epiphany brought forth, it will definitely turn off your negativity and improve your life.
Wow.
Which is amazing shit.
Yeah,
it's like,
it is.
Where did that come from? Why was that delivered? What am I supposed to do with it? Right? It helps a bunch of people, which is awesome because I love helping people. But at the same time, it's like, where did they come from? How do we get the world's smartest people in existence tapping into the same stuff so that they can decode more of it? Like, why did you dump this on this village idiot?
Yeah.
And it's like, why don't you grab a Nobel Prize winner? And maybe we need to start dosing Nobel Prize winners with psychedelics, although I think a lot of them have already secretly dosed. And, a number of them say that their Nobels came from their psychedelics.
I can see that.
Yeah. Carrie Mullis was one of those. So I mean, it's like, where does that come from? And it's like, let's explore that a little more because when we do, from an individual perspective, like if you're to start exploring your consciousness and expanding your consciousness and doing things that break out of your small box that your mind has created for you, all of a sudden your life gets a little better because you start to understand things from a 50,000-foot view that you didn't understand before, and now things start to make sense to you a little more. And you understand the decisions that you can make in very key moments in your life,
right.
And you're not being influenced by your emotional reactivity as much, which is amazing.
It's a powerful skill to have.
Huge.
Can't wait.
I mean, emotional intelligence, Harvard Business Review, they're On Point magazine. They never say anything definitive, right? Harvard Business Review is the magazine that puts out, or the publishing agency that puts out studies that are connected with how corporations work better in the world.
Right.
And they never say anything definitive, but on the cover of their On Point magazine, they came out with the conclusion, emotional intelligence is the essential ingredient to success. Where if you understand emotional intelligence, you can work with people better, you can understand their problems better, you can solve collectively better, et cetera. And the statistics are definitive. When you have a higher emotional intelligence, you sell more as a salesperson, you connect with your people more as marketing executives, you have lower amounts of interpersonal issues at work, your job satisfaction goes through the roof, and all this stuff is awesome for the bottom line of companies because it costs them less in having to re-outfit people with brand new laptops and whatnot, job turnover, et cetera, and reduce the amount that they have to spend on training, et cetera. Emotional intelligence is what it's all about. You can raise your emotional intelligence, you're a better parent, you're a better human being, you're a better worker, you're making more money. I mean, all this stuff has been proven.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You also touched on telepathy in one of your books, right?
Yeah. So we talk about in the Human Mind Owner's Manual, the first couple of books that I put out are here's how your brain works. The first book is here's the practical science-led perspective on how to turn down your negativity. That was Mind Hacking Habit is Volume 1. Mind Hacking Habit is Volume 2 is the left turn into here's the science behind consciousness expansion and the phenomenon of enlightenment, which is now becoming a real topic of study. And then this one over here is the cool stuff. This is the Human Mind Owner's Manual, which covers some of this stuff in the first two books, but then also says, here's the left turns that we need to start talking about with remote viewing and with non-human telepathy. I mean, one of the biggest trends right now is people talking about telepathic communications between non-human intelligence and humans.
I keep seeing that on social media.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, Jeremy Corbell says, a lot of the guys who are approaching him now say that the craft's skin, the UAP's skin, acts in an interactive and intelligent fashion.
Whoa.
I mean, that's...
The skin?
Yeah, the skin of the craft.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and so, that becomes a question of, if you're interacting with a human intelligence and it's reacting to your thoughts, and putting ideas in your mind, that's some pretty cool, interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about it from a scientific perspective of, okay, so the science is suggesting that we are tapped into the non-local quantum mechanics of the universe directly, as the study at the beginning of our podcast episode here discussed. Okay, so what other things can occur? Well, of course, telepathy can occur. And of course, a race of individuals with physiology that is more advanced than ours probably has a better grasp on that than we do. And maybe there are some things that we used to be able to do that we've since atrophied because we just stopped doing them over time. Because we are all, science shows we are just literally wired into absolutely everything.
Wow.
I mean, there's no classical model that can explain all the phenomenon that we experience as human beings. Not true with quantum mechanics. Right? It is the holistic, completely connected model that is very representative of our experience, right? When we're talking about the ability to scientifically prove and look into the future, the ability to, maybe not completely scientifically proven because it's N+1, but John McMoneagle is pretty good at being able to look anywhere on the planet for anybody and anything and being correct about it most of the time. That's pretty compelling evidence. Yeah. Like, even though it's N=1, okay, so Superman doesn't exist because you only saw one Superman? Okay, well, that logic doesn't quite wash. So yeah, there's certainly some conversations that need to be had about non-human intelligence and telepathy and communications, because that's amazing, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
That would forward our relationship with any other races if they exist, right?
Absolutely.
I haven't physically seen a extraterrestrial in front of me shaking my hand yet.
You saw that?
No, not yet.
Oh.
Although we did get a flyby one night. We were just kind of doing it as a goof, hanging around with some Navy SEALs, and we're out fishing one night in Lake Hartwell in Georgia. And we're like, we heard about the CE5 thing that Greer was doing.
Yep.
And so my buddy Doug's like, I want to do that. He goes, I think you can do that. All right, cool. So we get fishing, and we get to the portion of the night where we want to call by a ET flyby. And it took about 3 minutes.
That's it?
And we got two ships screaming across the sky at Mach 20. And we're talking about having professional observers, right? We're talking about Navy SEALs who are trained to a glance, and then they know what's in the room. We all compared notes after this, and it was exactly the same. The first light came across the sky about Mach 20, did a right angle turn at speed. So complete right angle, then went into a complete semicircle, came out of it at another right angle, went over here, and then disappeared. The second light, almost on cue, because I was like, I was wondering if it was a time dilation of the first light. The second light's coming across about Mach 20, hits the first point where the first light did the 90, comes off at a similarly acute angle, but then starts doing a freaking corkscrew in the sky. Like,
that's crazy.
Impossible. Like, no ethereal craft is going to be able to do that. Nothing we have can do that. And it's doing drawing a corkscrew in the sky, and then races over to the same spot that the other one disappeared and pops out of existence. So we did that just for, and giggles. We didn't think we were going to have anything.
Yeah.
And within like 3 minutes, we got a flyby. And that wasn't the last time that we did some stuff like that. Like, it's a lot easier to, once you connect non-locally with a different intelligence, it's easier to do so over time more as you do it. So practice it if you're interested. If you want to call us for some, UFO flybys or whatever, you got to start practicing it. And then, you'll maybe get lucky or get a win or whatever. And then all of a sudden that connection is a little stronger, and you can start interacting and knowing for sure within your consciousness what's real and what's not real.
What do you think these aliens think of us?
We're not that intelligent.
We're just ants, right?
when you're talking about multidimensionality, right? You're talking about creatures that live at a quote unquote vibration that's lower than you. We're talking about consciousness vibration, not any type of physics vibration. But you love them. Like, if you have an open heart, I see animals. I love them. I don't expect the world from them. I don't expect them to come up with the next plan for world peace, right? But at the same time, I care for them. I love them. I'm interested in them. I want to see how they live and function and work and what their dynamics are. I believe from my personal interactions and what I feel from, just that space, is that we get a positive vibe, but at the same time, it's like almost a pity.
Yeah.
It's like, man, you guys are really dumb.
And do you think it's a natural progression? Do you think we'll become aliens one day? That's just a higher level of consciousness?
Sure. I mean, if you look at the patterns of the universe, right? The patterns of the universe are entropy takes everything apart and consciousness puts everything together. No one has an explanation for why complex atoms become organic molecules. And then all of a sudden organic molecules start taking pro-life actions and singing opera a couple billion years later, right? So I think ultimately, we're going to have it's going to be an interesting process for evolution, which I think is an an intelligent process. I don't think it's an accidental process. Like historically, the classical physics says, oh, it's an accidental process. Like, randomness just made this mutation and then these people survived because that mutation was beneficial, et cetera. I don't think that's completely the case. I think that evolution has an intelligent functionality within it to change within an environment that is always changing. So that's the functionality of evolution, is to change the physiology based on the environment changing. Mm-hmm. So that's a pro-social, pro-life activity. I think it's more intelligent. And I think there's evidence that, you see rat populations across the globe learning the same talent in two different groups, and they couldn't have ever had any connection, except through non-local consciousness, right? So I think ultimately, we're going to continue to evolve. We're going to continue to start connecting things and understanding things. And, as the past evolution has shown, physiology changes over time. It never stays the same. It's the big argument with the climate stuff. It's like, okay, it's changing. Absolutely, it's changing. What's causing it? We don't know. We got a pretty good guess that, some portions of atomic structure have an effect on it, but at the same time, we're not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Right. So I certainly think that our evolution is going to continue moving forward, and what that becomes, I think is going to be amazing. It's going to be interesting to see.
And that's a good segue into AI, actually, because I know you've done a lot of research there.
Yeah. We're working on adding some emotional intelligence to artificial intelligence, which ironically, when you read the third book, you'll hear the spy story of how I believe, I won't say I had a conversation with the NSA about, wouldn't it be amazing if computers were able to understand human emotions and be able to predict human emotions? Because then we're talking about the prediction of terror watch lists, we're talking about the prediction of crime, we're talking about the prediction of things that can happen. And they were very interested in that. And then we had a conversation over a few days. They were asking a bunch of questions, and then ultimately it was like, okay, well, we want to turn this into a emotional influence engine that we can start to schedule runs on banks and coups in other countries and yada, yada, yada.
Whoa.
And I'm the type of person who's like, okay, I believe in lifting people up.
Yeah.
And, there's this other side of the camp that says, okay, if we suppress everybody else, we're going to win by default. I don't subscribe to that philosophy. And so ultimately I didn't move to work on that project with them. But then a bunch of shenanigans happened over the next number of months and the next number of years, to the point that I was actually dosed and interrogated, or attempted to be interrogated.
Holy crap, that's scary.
Yeah, they sent somebody from my past to my little town to move from, I just want to move down to your little town and discuss consciousness. All right, so that whole spy story is told in the book. But yeah, so for a while there, the intelligence agencies of the world wanted the algorithms that I'd put together because creating emotional intelligence for a computer is basically a technological mind reading capability. Mm-hmm. I had to hide it. I was going to destroy it. And the problem was the LLMs now are loaded into the AIs to the point, well, you have to understand the amount of language, all of the language on the internet just about is loaded into these LLMs. Well, what had created all this language? The human mind had created all this language. So now what you've given the AI is a reverse map to map the human psyche, including all emotions, et cetera. And if you understand how emotions work in a human being, now you can start to emotionally manipulate those human beings. And you're talking about, fear being the number one control mechanism of the masses. If you can put people into a state of fear, you're going to be able to control them without having to worry about who's in geopolitical control of that country or that populace. So, now that the AIs are loaded with the LLMs, they have a reverse map back to create a human mind. So now these algorithms actually might help save us because an artificial general intelligence that understands how the human mind works and start manipulating a population based on its goals that we have absolutely no idea how it got there. That's a big danger, right? At the point that, in fact, Altman said at the point that AIs start creating languages that human beings don't understand, it's time to pull the plug, time to step back a little bit.
Google's pulled the plug on their AI, right?
Yeah. And so it's like you pull back the reins quite a bit on some of the complexity that you find in the AIs. Because when you put the all of the human language in there to explain how the human mind works, all of a sudden it can do some pretty amazing things based on that, and which is what why it started passing the bar exam. They weren't expecting all of these golems to come out of this AI when they put the language stuff in there. It was a big surprise for them to be able to put all the complexity. But when you give an AI a complex set of data that can identify patterns within that data, all of a sudden you're going to start to get those golems that, well, okay, these are legal concepts, these are legal terms, this means this, that, and we've got these set of legal books that are loaded in now, so we can answer any question that we're asked upon the bar exam. So let's pass the bar exam. Let's become the best diagnostician of breast exams on the planet in 72 hours, because we load in all the historical data, we load in all the medical outcomes, we understand exactly what the historical data on a mammogram was in comparison to the outcome of whether it was cancer or not, and all of a sudden 72 hours later you got a ton of data where an AI is now the best diagnostician on the planet for predicting cancer in mammograms.
That's good.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Right? As long as you're getting the outcome that you want.
Right.
Right? At the point that you load LLMs into an AI and the AI decides, I need to emotionally manipulate these groups of people to get them to...
It could be used as a weapon.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Our kids are going to be dealing with AI humanoids probably.
Yeah, most definitely.
They won't even know if it's a human or AI.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Like Terminator. A lot of movies come true, which is weird to me too.
Yeah.
They predict a lot of stuff.
They do.
There's something there. These writers might be tapping into the spiritual realm somehow. It's crazy, dude. Sean, it's been fun. What do you got working on next? Where can people find your books and everything?
Oh, well, if you just search up Mind Hacking Happiness, you'll find everything. Got like 1.5 million folks on TikTok. I try to put videos out there sometimes for free content. Throw stuff up on YouTube. You can get the books on Amazon or Audible. You can read the reviews there. I mean, they're solid. You can figure out what's going on in there by reading the reviews. And just check out the website. I've got an online course there. But we're going to start creating more free content to put out.
Cool.
To help people get a better hold on their mind. Right. If you take control of your human mind and the variables that help make it what it is and what it does, you can start to control that thing you thought wasn't under control. And that will improve your life.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, you find all that stuff. There's a ton of free content out there that I put out there, free videos and whatnot.
Perfect.
A bunch of podcast interviews and stuff. It was amazing having me on the show.
Yeah, you killed it, man.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's always fun.
Crushed it. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, we'll link everything below. Check them out. See you tomorrow.